Today on this episode of Growth Science, we're speaking with Abha DasGupta, who's the founder of STRATVY. I've worked with Abha for quite a while. And before I do these, I usually like to think about some words that I associate with the people that I'm interviewing. And when I think about Abha, I just think about super intelligent, super driven, but very strategic. And I always appreciated that in working with her. So I'm excited to talk to her today about just her thoughts around growth and opportunities to help grow your business. So to get started here, Abha, maybe you could just share a little bit about your company and your journey.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, and thanks for having me. I was looking back at how long we've known each other, and it has been 10 years, so that's 10 years of more knowledge, right? That's fantastic, right? That's how I like to look at it. We're not 10 years older, we're just 10 years
Right.
smarter.
Wiser,
Right?
exactly.
That's right. We're wiser. We're wiser now. I have, as you mentioned, I have started my own consulting and strategy firm called STRATVY. And prior to that, really started out early on in the consulting world. So I feel like I really got my training at KPMG. And I think for all of those that have been in the consulting world, it really does. It trains you very quickly to be able to not only think and work with your clients in a very strategic fashion, be very objective. So you're coming in and really trying to fix a problem, right, that a client has and they probably already made a mess of. And then you're also, while doing that, trying to win business at the same time for KPMG. And so it really set me up, I feel like, very, very successfully. And I was lucky enough, I was doing my MBA at the time at American University. And one of my fellow classmates and I were doing a project together, and I happened to kind of help him out a little bit. And he said, "Hey, I've got a great job at KPMG for you." So that worked out really, really well. And I think that for me, every role I've ever had, I really come in as a consultant and really think objectively, what are we going to go do? What is working? What's not working? How do we improve? And I think that's constantly how I think. And through that, had an opportunity to work at AOL. And believe it or not, work on the dial-up business and selling off the access business, which I'm sure no one even knows what that is anymore. But it was really interesting, right? Because that's a great opportunity to see where you've got certainly dying technology, right? A dying business, and how do you pivot? How do you actually take a dying business and determine the best path forward? And obviously AOL decided to go in the advertising route, which was a great move from them at that time. And being able to really work with those customers. We were selling the businesses internationally, because at that time they were still using dial-up. And so we were selling it internationally, but trying to figure out how do we best work together to partner to create some kind of lasting, not only relationship, but how do we appeal to those customers now in these joint partnerships? So there's a lot of joint marketing, joint go-to-market, but also joint product activity. And so that was really, really interesting to be able to be a part of that. And from there, really got my opportunity. I had met individual at AOL and moved over to K-12. And that's where I got to meet you, Ben, which was fantastic. And K-12 was really interesting. They were also going through a lot of changes, trying to become more agile and nimble within the technology space. Really, the beginnings of online learning really started with K-12. They were really the pioneers. But what we weren't doing well at that time was the idea of multimodal capability sets, being able to really function and work not only on mobile devices and tablets, but now what we call microlearning was non-existent at that time. So really, it was that full end-to-end courses. You know this, of course, and so really being able to appeal to an audience that was really maybe saying, "Hey, we just want review and practice from you," or "We just want career and technology courses," or what we now kind of talk about upskilling. All the various audiences. That was not something that was as prevalent at that time. And so really came in to reimagine that product. And in doing that, started to build a product that was around review and practice. It was called Embark. And They moved me over then to my first opportunity to really lead and manage a business as the general manager of the private school business and the direct to consumer business. And I think that was my first entrance in really understanding, well, what does it really take? I mean, I did an MBA, sure, but you know this, you really hands-on learning is the best way to understand what to do and what works, what doesn't work. And that was my first entry point in really owning a business end to end, owning that P&L, owning really that mini CEO role, having product and having the business side, the marketing side, sales, product operations, all under me. So that was really fantastic learnings for me, and really understanding how do you not only grow a business, but how do you start to understand your customer better? So I think that was really key, especially since most of K-12 was the public school market. And I don't know how much we really did to understand, hey, there's other markets there. There's other verticals that we could be going and expanding, like the private schools, like that direct to consumer audience. Really loved it, and then got an opportunity to work at more of a startup. So went from this billion-dollar publicly traded company to a very, very small driver training organization at eDriving, and was able to really come in and change our business model and flip it from that B2C to B2B model, and go after really fleet drivers and create a driver program and create a mobile app that allowed us to really be in car and control that drive for those drivers, help them assess their driving ability, and then serve up again that micro learning, that bite-sized content. And through all of that, I think, that's where I really learned that whether you're in ed tech or whether you're in fintech, or I had a foray in cybersecurity as well as the chief product and strategy officer, I believe throughout all of that, there are some themes that you learn of what really looks like a great business, how to grow a great business, how to create a great culture within your organization as well. And so through all of that, I felt that I could impart some of those knowledge points that I've learned, where those failures have occurred for me. How can I help those companies improve? How do you top down really create the right kind of strategy, that strategic vision, the OKRs? Right. How are you measuring for success? And then as you're measuring for success, are you ensuring that you're really focused as an organization? And then from that comes your product strategy. So really helping organizations with that product strategy, really developing where the market is going, but more importantly, not only where the market is going, but also where are those company strengths also? Where can they converge together in that nice little Venn diagram? So I've been doing that now for a few months now, just really creating this fractional environment, coming in as a fractional, either CEO, a strategy officer, chief product officer, helping these small to mid-sized organizations that are, some are in education, believe it or not, some are in that cybersecurity realm. But because I also have a lot of background in SaaS, so it's a lot of SaaS-based organizations that are they're really at that next step. They're really at that growth stage of what do we do next to really grow and see that 3x, 5x, 10x growth.
Right. What a great introduction. Thank you for that. I mean, there's so many things there that I want to touch upon, but it's great that you have such a diverse range of experiences. I do agree with you that thinking like a consultant, like from my experiences doing both, it's really beneficial when you're actually within the workplace, because it is just a different mindset. It's about understanding what needs to change, how do we improve it, measuring that effectively, and those are demands that your clients will have of you. So I would definitely recommend to people, if you have an opportunity to work as a consultant prior to working full time, it's a great experience that really will benefit you going forward. So thank you for that background. It's terrific. So based on your experience, what would you say is a key factor to helping grow a company? And any sort of example you could provide around that based on your experience would be great.
Yeah, it's an interesting question and a good one, because I think, depending on the organization you are in, they may say, oh, the key for growth is different. And I think as you kind of hit on the head, I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, and I've been in so many different industries, which sometimes can be a detriment, right? And sometimes it's really been helpful, because I do think I have seen at least those key themes emerge.
Right.
And the key theme that I have seen where a company has done very well from a growth perspective is what I was kind of alluding to earlier. And it's really articulating your vision, your mission, your value proposition really well early on. So I think you get lost in the noise, right? So we've seen, and I'll use, my cybersecurity company as an example, because we had great thought going into a lot of the products that were being created. And there were a lot of different products being created. So you're creating a lot of different products, trying to create a data analytics platform so that you can really ingest these multiple data sets and do the analysis, while still trying to create something that is going to ensure that you're detecting those threats coming into those customers. And the problem that you end up having, or a lot of companies end up having, is they spread themselves so thin and they try to create the best product in the world. So they're really trying to go for that 100%. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but the best advice I give my clients is, make your product like 70%, like not even the 80-20, like get to 70% and really understand what problem you're solving in the market. Are you solving the problem with what you have? And it's as easy as truly doing a matrix almost and saying, here are the 3 problems, and this is how the product or the solution or the service is solving it. Does it solve it or not, right? So it's almost kind of going back to your old days of product management and doing that product matrix that is really going through and saying, okay, from the code to actually what we ultimately wanted to do for our customers, is it doing that, right? And so I think that's really key, is understanding that you're solving problems and then making sure that you're bringing either those prospect customers on the ride with you. And what I mean by that is asking them often and frequently, hey, I've now prototyped this. Is this something that's going to meet your needs? Does this actually solve your problem of, for example, you're seeing that you're having a slow cycle from your top of funnel into your sales cycle. Right. Is what I've created from a product perspective helping you to not only better monitor what your influx of leads is, but most importantly, is it helping you actually solve that customer pain point and close the sale sooner, right? Because that's really what they'd be looking for. Right. And so I think once you understand that and you're able to work with them, it's really saying, like, you can build a product and that build your product and they will come, we all know, right, doesn't work. And so you could have a great product, but you haven't built the right kind of messaging or go-to-market strategy around it. It's kind of dead in the water. But I think where companies have failed, in my mind, is they have done a poor job of really articulating, here's what we do and here's our unique value proposition of how we do it. It gets lost in the noise, and it's really difficult. You want to, and I get it, especially when you are a very technology focused company that is pretty complicated, right? In the back end, perhaps you're creating something that is a SaaS-based solution that has a lot of different layers to it and application layers. You want to really describe every little thing that it does. Unfortunately, you've lost the point of what your business was actually trying to do. And it was really trying to solve that specific pain point for the customer. So I'd say, that's where I have seen a company that really articulates the pain point and has focus, right? So doesn't go into 80 different ways that they can solve your pain with 80 different products, but rather being very, very focused to say, here's how we solve it. We do this very well, and really, really capitalize on doing that well. So they have permission to win in that space. And then you can grow from there. But once you really knock that out of the park, then I think you can start to see the growth, the expansion, the diversification of your portfolio.
No, those are two things I definitely take away from that, which are great, and which in previous interviews, people have mentioned in different ways, but I think you articulate that very well. One is like being able to, I mean, obviously making sure you have a product that solves a need, and messaging that in correctly. Like one of the things that we see through working with many different clients is like the CEO is very passionate about his or her product and is able to sell it to anyone essentially, but they never really figure out what it's about. So it's really the strength of that person's personality that's selling. I mean, obviously there's a need there, but they don't go through and actually take the time to articulate what problem it's solving. And so when they want to scale beyond the CEO or the founder, it becomes very challenging for others within the organization to sell that product. And so I think that's a great point. And the other thing is, I think like solving a specific need and being great at that is a base from which to grow.
Yeah, and I think, you had hit something on the head with the founder mentality. And I've worked for several founders now, and it's fantastic because they're passionate, they're brilliant. They know their product inside out. And that hence is where some of the problem actually ends up happening. They know it so well that when they're trying to articulate it, whether it's to prospect, to employees, right, to even current customers, frankly, right, current customers that may not understand the breadth of the suite that they're offering, it's so innate to them. They're like, oh, right, I understand all of this so very well. The problem becomes is that the attention span typically, right, this, if someone kind of looking for a solution, they're going to search for it and they're like, I'm not hearing like the words, I'm not seeing like really what this does. AI in particular, or it's like, oh, we use like machine learning to do some predictive modeling. And they get lost in all of that, as opposed to just very simplistic English of, hey, you have this specific problem. Here's how we solve it. Call us to figure out more, right? You don't have to actually give too much information. It's enough to have the understanding of it's clear what you do. It's clear what problem you're solving. Now I'll call you to get a demo, or I'll call you to get more information so that you can go into the details and nitty gritty of how you do what you do. What technically are you doing in your tech stack to really get there? And I think the founder-led mentality becomes a little difficult because they understand it so well. And that's where folks like yourself, like myself, because we're coming in with a new set of eyes, I think it helps them because you can be very objective. And I think that's why I say like that idea of customer-centric, being able to lean on your prospects and customers. I mean, if they don't understand it, if you say things to them and all they hear is gobbledygook on the other end, you failed, right? And so I think bringing in those customers often to say, hey, does this make sense to you? And a lot of times you bring in customers to do user acceptance testing. But I say go, beyond that, beyond user acceptance testing, it's let me give you some messaging. Let me give you how I'm positioning this. Does this make sense to you? And they might say, no, I actually don't understand what you're trying to sell. And so I think customers like that, or friendlies, as I call them, they can be really instrumental in helping you kind of co-create the right kind of product offering.
Right. No, that's great. That's a great point. So on the flip side, and it's fine if it's just a poor product offering, but what do you think causes companies, just based on your experience, to not be able to grow successfully or to fail?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it often. I'm sure you have too, and it's good because you know what, failure is a good thing, right? I mean, for us to be able to fail and learn from that, totally fine. And it's what you do with that failure. How quickly do you actually pivot? Do you change direction? Do you learn from that failure and do something different? Is critical. So I think, the number one area, and it's probably because of where I'm coming into a lot of organizations, really creating their strategic vision, their mission, their objectives, their OKRs. I think that is where number one companies fail. Number one is not having clear goals, clear focus, clear direction, and being able to do that vision in a way that says, well, great, maybe the strategic fit is really more to be able to introduce AI in assessments in higher education, for example. Great. But guess what? We don't have any data scientists. We're not a data analytics company, right? So I think it's not only understanding the market of where you need to focus and where that growth opportunity is, but also then overlaying what are the abilities that we have.
Right.
And I don't mean to limit yourself. I'm not saying limit yourself to what you are today, but I mean at the heart of the hearts of who you are. If you say at the heart of what I am is a curriculum company, then trying to overlay this idea of becoming a data analytics company might be a huge stretch to do. That might be your 5-year, 10-year stretch goal. But immediately, what can you do to meet the market demands? And so really understanding that clear focus, really having clear not only goals, but what's that measurement, those KPIs? Well, how am I measuring myself for success? And then being very transparent, not only at that leadership level or executive level, but ensure that you're doing that down the chain, that everyone's really clear on, we're going to work on these 3 things. This is how here's the roadmap for success to get there. Here's the results that we're looking for. And if we aren't hitting those results, here's then options 3, 4, 5 that we're going to go after to go see that kind of A/B planning, if you will.
Right.
I'd say the second piece, which we were talking about even earlier, is that customer-centric approach. So we tend to kind of, particularly in product organizations, get really behind a product that we're building. We think it's fantastic. Isn't it wonderful? We use the latest and greatest technology. And then we forget about the fact that there's an end customer at the end of this that really needs to utilize it. So really understanding, again, that customer need. Are we solving the problem? And then not only just understanding, and a lot of times companies stop at kind of top of funnel to like sale. And unfortunately, they're not looking at that entire customer journey. So pre-customer coming in, how they come in, what worked, what didn't work. Now that we have them, even in our sales pitches, what worked, what didn't work. Now we've sold to them, and we tend to say, we've sold to you, fantastic, like moving on to the next to go get the next customer. And what we failed them with is implementation, training, customer success, being able to upsell. I think that we don't, a lot of companies tend to not value those customers as well as they should. Retention of a customer, as you know, the ROI of upselling to a current customer is fantastic, right? You're really going to reap the rewards. You want to retain that customer. We tend to forget that, and we tend to try to go after the next. And it's really very costly to go get and acquire a new customer versus keeping that current customer happy, upselling to them, making sure you're meeting their needs, and then most importantly, having them evangelize on your behalf to go acquire other customers. So I think that's number 2. I'd say number 3 is poor planning. And what I mean by that is this idea of lack of agility in a lot of companies, where they tend to think in a very behemoth way. They think very linearly. We have to do things in this very specific way. They're not thinking, okay, we're going to try these 3 main things. Some of them may fail. We're going to have plans B, C, and D behind them. And the ones that fail, we're going to start to cut off, and we're going to quickly pivot and move to this other direction. So I think it's really planning ahead to say, okay, we think in the market that we're going to go after this data analytics platform. This is how we're going to do it. But if that doesn't work, we have another plan B, plan C kind of in our back pocket. And being able to do something where you're building it, and I use the word prototype, but some way to demonstrate to the industry or to your customer base that you've built something, but not build it all the way to MVP quite yet, so that you have the opportunity to get the feedback and to move and to be very agile.
Right.
So I think those are really, really key. And I think as part of that, like the 4th item that's kind of like a sub 3B is not only that lack of agility, is that you end up being so dependent on a single customer or market,
right,
that you don't start to think about, well, you don't think in advance of how could I utilize this product or this offering in a different market or a different vertical. They become very single customer focused. So I think, those are kind of the top 4 things that I really see that start to have these organizations crumble a bit because they're not getting ahead of it.
No, I think it's great. And I love that you started with the idea of the vision. I mean, that's something we run into a lot. And it could be even, and we've written a little bit about this recently, but it could be more tactical. Like, for instance, a company we're working with may say, look, we're going to pursue a product-led growth strategy. And then we go talk to the product team. And they're like, that's not my goal. That's not my vision. It's like, well, how are you going to do a product-led growth strategy if not everyone's on board? And product especially is not on board with this. And so it's like, establishing that vision and getting everyone aligned with it, like it's almost impossible to be successful without doing that first. So I think that's a great.
And companies overlook. I think they think, oh wow, and it is true. It takes months to get your OKRs, get them aligned and get them downstream so that there is a mapping, right, to the overarching corporate OKRs. That does take months, and I think companies often don't want to take the time to do that because they've got to move. But what happens is then downstream, they don't realize it, the cost that it takes to then get everyone back on board, then to try to figure, oh, whoa, that didn't work. Why isn't it working? The cycles that it takes. I think I read somewhere is that it might take 3 months, let's say, of your goal planning. But if you do not do that up front, it's almost 9 to 10 months of disorganization and unraveling the organization. And then what you have ultimately then is a culture in the organization where they're not trusting that leadership, they're not trusting the management. And so now you've got, instead of everyone kind of rowing in the same direction, they're all going in different areas. And that's where you do see then a huge dissatisfaction, not only of your employees, but of your customers. Because your customers then say, we don't know who you are either, right? They're having a hard time understanding who you are. So I think that's like the biggest takeaway for any organization is spend those 3 months really doing planning. It doesn't mean that you stop everything, right? Like, so the intention here is like, go stop, but really bring, certainly the executive team. And then I say even like a layer down of your up and coming resources or your employees that are really going to help you strengthen the organization. Really spend that time to say, okay, at least once a month, we're going to get together and kind of figure out what's happening in the market. Let's kind of get our heads out of the day to day and really think about what we need to do and what that vision should look like. But those goals on a quarterly basis should be crisp, should be clear. Everyone in the organization should know, okay, we have to grow by 15% and we're going to do these 3 things to go do it. Because otherwise, you're right, it becomes chaos, and it's very, very difficult then to prioritize work across the organization, from product down to HR and finance, right? Everyone's then doing various different things and it's very inefficient.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting. We've talked about the inefficiency of having people not aligned, but I think you raise a great point about just the conflict it creates and realigning people, and the lack of trust. I mean, I think that's a terrific point, and something that can be it's not easy, but can be solved for. It's not a miracle. Like, if you put the work in, you'll be able to get people aligned, and it's just important to do that up front. So that's a really great point. So you have very diverse experience, so you may have seen it all, but is there anything that just has surprised you or has gone against conventional wisdom?
I mean, that's a great question. So I was, this is even from like a couple of years ago, but one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and you may have seen this as well, is kind of how Zappos is creating a culture within their organization. And one of the hiring practices that they use, which I thought was really interesting, because typically you're trying to pull people in, right? Your cost of acquisition, even of your employees, very high. So you're trying to pull these people in, have them stay with you, stick it through. And through culture, I've been part of organizations that have fantastic cultures, some that don't have such great cultures. And through it all, what you're really trying to do, right? You want folks to be invigorated. You want them to really have a passion for that organization, for the product, for the whatever you're doing for that community or for your customers. And so I thought it was really interesting that Zappos started to really implement this idea of, even in their training program. So they have people come on board, they've hired them fully, They have them in training, and even during training, they say, hey, we'll give you money to leave the company, right? So we'll give you money for you to leave, especially if you're not feeling it, right? Like you're not feeling it if you don't feel like you're 100% behind it. And they gave them enough money, more than they would actually make, kind of staying on for like the month. And so a lot of folks would take them up on it, right? And say, oh, sure, I'll take that money and leave and go find something else. And that to me is a real unconventional way of determining who's like, and I hate to say it, but who is drinking that Kool-Aid and in it to win it, who's really passionate, who's going to give it their all. And that kind of goes hand in hand with kind of one of the second pieces is this idea of ROWE, ROWE, which you might have heard of, right? Results only work environment. And a lot of companies really incorporating that, which I think is really key, of saying, hey, it comes back to, do we know our goals? Do we know our objectives? Do we know our KPIs? And as long as the company, the organization, the employees are meeting those achievements and they're meeting those goals and objectives, then it really doesn't matter how much time you've spent, right? And I think that gives folks, coming back to that idea of what Zappos was doing too, gives folks a sense of purpose. Like, I'm in it to win, I'm part of this organization, and I really feel strongly about the mission. I'm aligned with the mission, and I'm going to just, crank it out. I'm going to get things done. And I think that really, really helps. So I think those have been ways that I have seen organizations that might even have great plans. If you don't have the right kind of culture or skill, like it's beyond even skill set, it's the mentality of your people to have that grit, to have that drive. If they don't have that, I think you're dead in the water, because many times, and we've seen this in founder-led organizations, they feel like they can do it all. And then what's the point of your team? And I think that's just the wrong approach. Is you need a team, very much so. You absolutely can't do it all. You don't know everything. And it's really important to have that kind of mentality where you really are, you're empowering your folks, but they're so excited. They're excited to be there. They're passionate to be there. I think that that's really important. The other thing that I've seen that has worked well, which, I think it's becoming actually more mainstream. So maybe not as much as something that is unconventional, but what I was talking about before of bringing your next level, next in command, right? Your directors, your manager levels on board, and having this idea of like a holacracy approach of self-management. And that's really around where you have the authority, your decision making, it's distributed, right? So it's not all with, the chief marketing officer only makes all the marketing decisions, but rather it's, not only am I going to have my marketing manager make those decisions, but they have to do it in hand with the customer success manager as well, because we're trying to see that, hey, the upfront work that we're doing from a marketing, demand gen, the funnel, is it really translating when we come back to customers from customer success, when customers say, you sold me this, but this is really what I got in reality, and now I'm not happy, right? And so this idea of saying those worker bees, right, the ones that are on the front lines, they get the ability and autonomy to make those decisions and feel like they're really part of that decision making, that organization. I have seen that work really, really well, that has been fantastic to see. And being able to, even when I was at Vanco, which is at its heart is a payments platform, and we had some application layers, SaaS application layers that kind of sat on top. And in my organization, I was the president and GM of education. And so it was really education-based applications for education management. So things like childcare management, food management services within schools, being able to manage auctioning, things of that nature. And so when you think of those items, you've got other lines of business. Let's say we also were in the community-based and faith-based organizations. And one of the things the CEO did there that I thought was really fantastic is he created basically this strategic organization, and he had the next level of the up-and-comers in the organization really come forward and say, hey, here's what I'm seeing, and here's the ideas that I have. And so then being able to evaluate, do some business case development, obviously, across those ideas to see how you would prioritize what you go after. But I thought that was really helpful because those are the folks that are really strategically thinking about the business, and they're in it. They're in it with the customers. They're in it with what's working, what's not working. And I think that's a really helpful way also for them to be engaged and to understand and have that transparency of where we're trying to go, and to know that, hey, the executive management team, they understand the hurdles and the obstacles we have also, right? And I think that's also, it's not only all about the successes, but it's also, hey, we know where things are falling short and we're going to go work on those as well. So I think all of those together have been really some great ways, I feel like great paths that some of these organizations have taken that help them not only grow, but keep the company intact.
Right, absolutely. Well, you obviously have your passion for how the organization is structured and the strategy they're pursuing and making sure people are aligned with that really comes through. I mean, I think it's great. And something that's like easy. We deal a lot with companies that have just recently received investment from private equity or VC. And that's one of the things that doesn't get thought about first, interestingly enough. They may think about, do they need new leadership? But these sort of fundamental issues don't get thought about as top priority. And so, but I think they're so critical. And that's one of the takeaways that we usually come away with, is that like, you need to spend more time on thinking about your organization and how it's structured, and how are you communicating with your employees, because not being effective on that can be a major issue and hinder you from growing and being successful. So it's so cool that you have that passion around it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for your time today. This is awesome. I had not heard about Row, so I'm gonna go Google that, or use AI for that chat.
There you go. That's right. ChatGPT.
I am very interested on AI in higher education, so you'll have to come back again so we can discuss that.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. A lot going on there. A lot going on.
Yeah. Well, I was like, you can't can't read anything without it mentioning AI now. So.
Oh yeah, and that's the buzzword, right? I feel like that's the buzzword, and so it's really, I think that comes back to, again, right, having those clear objectives and unique value proposition. Well, what does that really mean, right? What are you going to do with AI, and how is it any different than anyone else, right? And so I think that's really important. And the one last thing I would say that I forgot to mention is, I think, yes, you need to have a unique value proposition, certainly, of what it is you're selling, but you don't have to be unique in the market. And what I mean by that is, there's a lot of competitive products doing AI in higher ed, for example. You don't necessarily have to be earth-shattering that you built something. It's really, are you building it in a way that, from a user experience perspective, it's more usable, more understandable? And then are you positioning it in a way that's clearer than your competition? Because
Right.
you could have, right, a similar product, but if you are able to really win that war to say, hey, I really am going to meet your needs, and here's
Right.
how, you articulate it better, I think that it really, really goes a long way in the market.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, sometimes if you're doing something too innovative, it may raise a question.
Backfire, right? It could backfire, right? I mean, we know that from K-12, right? I think they were a little ahead of their time when they first came out with full-time online distance learning, and then over time, right, grew to be something more mainstream in the market.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was so good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Love to chat again, and we will talk soon. Thank you.
Excellent. I appreciate it, Ben. Thank you so much.
Of course.